Well, to discuss this further, let's speak to Thomas Isaac in Thiruvananthapuram. He is the Minister of Finance for Kerala and a Central Committee member of the Communist Party of India. And in New Delhi, we have Amit Kapoor. He's the chairman of the India Institute for Competitiveness. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Thomas Isaac, let me begin with you, sir. So just so I understand it completely clearly, we've had the floods, you're trying to rebuild, we have disease issues, people are still suffering, people are dying. And as far as I understand, you're saying the central government's not giving you the funds that you need. Is that where you stand?
Well, we are disappointed with the amount of money they have granted us. Now, it doesn't meet a fraction of the requirements. And therefore, we are looking for alternatives. Now, our choices are limited because we have gone to a national GST that has totally bound our hands regarding enhancement of tax revenues and so on. Therefore, with central government being very niggardly and miserly, and avenues of additional resource mobilization being limited, we have appealed to the people to come forward. The Malayali diaspora in India and outside. And the initial feedback has been very, very encouraging. I think it is going to be an all-time record inflow of donations coming to Chief Minister's Distress Relief Fund. Initially, our expectation was something like an amount equivalent to what the central government has now allotted us. But now we have more, double the amount. And I think it may go to 4 or 5 times the grant given by the central government. So that gives us a confidence, yes, we will be able to overcome. Just like we have withstood the floods, we will be able to take forward the reconstruction activities.
Amit Kapoor, why does it seem as if the central government is being stingy here? Keralites are dying, Keralites are suffering, Keralites need to rebuild, and we have the man in the know, Mr. Isaac, saying they're only receiving a fraction of the funds that they need. What's going on?
So I think when you're saying that the central government is being stingy, I think there are larger issues that we have to understand as to what is really happening. As the minister had actually said, like there is a new form of taxation, the GST, and that is actually causing some set of concerns. But I really don't think here that there is a stinginess here. I think it's being made into a larger issue as a political issue, and that's an unfortunate reality. I don't think it's a political issue. It is more in terms of like how quickly the central government can actually do, what are the issues of governance, and so on and so forth. I look at it as a larger issue of governance and a larger issue of how states and the federal government actually react and act together. So there are those issues that we really need to actually take into account. And then, of course, like from a political viewpoint, there are many issues that are emerging which say there is a BJP versus the state or whatever. I find that to be fairly annoying because that just finishes the debate in terms of like we are not respecting the dead, we are not respecting the issue, rather than focusing on the thing. So I think this is where I would also suggest that the central government should actually come forward much stronger. They should allay the fears and work towards it.
Okay.
In the past, as like whenever we've had
let me understand something, if you don't mind, right? So I want to understand something. If this is not the deliberate withholding of funds, and there's no nefarious element to that, and you say this is part of a larger issue between the state and the central government and how they govern, are you saying that essentially the system's broken and it's because of incompetence?
So when you're saying the system itself, I think there is an urgent need for a structural change in the governance structure of the country. Because I think this is where, like, when you say that we are dependent on central government for everything, but the states in themselves are fairly powerful units which can do something significant. And within the states itself, they have to actually look at the larger issue in terms of like how they manage disaster. They have to create the sets of systems in place and bring the systems in place. So the larger structural issue actually does exist at hand. Now, the question is also in terms of like how the state and the center, interacts. What kind of funds can actually go through?
Right.
And as the minister had actually said, like the diaspora is helping, so it is going to
So,
happen
okay,
that way.
but then again, okay, they shouldn't need to ask the diaspora, the Malayali diaspora, for money, or they shouldn't need the UAE's money if they can even get it, right? Again, I'm struggling because I want to get to the heart of it all. Does the central government want to give them money, but they can't? What's going on? What's the hindrance here? Do they want to actually give them money and something's blocking them?
I think there is a larger issue here. Like, where is the money in the system itself? Like, what is the kind of money that is required? I think there is a significant amount that is required for rebuilding, and the government of India, that is the central government, should actually give as much as possible. They should not really stall it. But I think the issue as of now is to really rebuild the humanitarian help that is actually required. The money will happen on its own. In fact, as of now, the focus should actually be and as to how do we rebuild, how do we really help the disease that is actually emerging, how do we stop that, how do we actually get food to people. So right now it is a humanitarian intervention that is required, people are required, rather than saying that the money goes into the banks. The money will come. I don't think that the money is not going to come. I think we're just overshooting the thing. We have to really wait, we have to get our act in order. We need to make sure that things on the ground are getting right. The water is receding, people are not getting affected with disease, and so on and so forth. There is also a larger thing that we have to look at, like the mistake that the governments have actually, successive governments have done in Kerala. They have simply destroyed the fragile ecosystem that actually exists there. I'm not blaming the present government or whatever, but I'm saying the successive governments in the past, the people out there in terms of creating high-rise buildings, just flouting the
Okay.
norms, the
Okay, so
quarry
let me
mining
take that point. Okay, so Thomas Isaac, do you have to
Yes.
bear some of the blame as the state government in Kerala for the kind of disaster that could have been? You can't avoid flooding, you can't stop the rains, but you can stop its aftermath because you didn't get your house in order on the ground. Is that a fair accusation?
No, there is some truth in it. This present flood should prompt us to review our development policies, particularly with the land development policies in the ecologically fragile regions and river basin management and so on. But don't exaggerate it. The worst flood in Kerala occurred in 1924, which was worse than this. That's the part of our history. Well, then Kerala was in its pristine glory, but still floods came. Therefore, while accepting the fact there are many issues of ecological concern, now this is not a man-made disaster. The actual rain that happened in 4 or 5 days' time is something like in the basin of some of the major rivers, so 600% of what was predicted, what was the normal rain. And no system could have handled that. And this is something similar that happened in 1924. Though, therefore, definitely, when we are going to reconstruct Kerala, we will learn proper lessons from this natural disaster. How we could have managed it better. That is point number one. Point number two, how we could have improved the water retention capacity of our major river basins, how the landslides could have been avoided if we had been more careful with the land development policies, the hilly terrain, and so on. Proper lessons will be learned and taken. But nevertheless, you have to accept the fact it's unprecedented rainfall, something very similar to what happened in 1924, which created this havoc. And therefore, I think
Right.
it will be unfair to make such
Right.
a
Do you,
allegation.
Sir, Mr. Isaac, do you at all feel that the BJP-led central government doesn't want to help you as much as it should be helping you because you're communists?
Look, our chief minister, his response to the initial, very small amount of grant given was that he will take up with the Prime Minister of India. Very well, we'll talk to the Prime Minister. That was his response to the denial of the donation from UAE to Kerala. That we will take it to the Prime Minister. Now, at this moment of time, we don't want to politicize it that way. In fact, we are continuing the dialogue with the central government. Of the total money we require, 1/3 is for revenue expenditure, 2/3 would be for capital expenditure. Now, the state governments to borrow, they need to get permission from center. So we are telling the center, we need this money, just give us permission. Don't stand by this fiscal deficit ceiling. Central government the last 15 years have been much above the fiscal deficit ceiling imposed by FRBM Act. Therefore, don't play around with that. Kerala needs this money, allow us to borrow. Well, I am going to meet the finance minister, give him the memorandum. Secondly, we are asking, we need revenue. Unless we mobilize revenue, my revenue deficit will be yawning, and that will make my debts unsustainable.
Right.
And therefore, we are saying, you give grant. But I understand, central government is also in a very good shape. And for them also fiscal deficit is high. They may not be able to give the grant. Then I am telling, please permit me to have a search on GST. GST Council, I hope will discuss that. Thirdly, I'm saying, there are lots of friends of Kerala all over.
Yes.
A country like UAE, a special relationship. Half the population hails from Kerala.
Yeah.
Want to help us. Don't stand in the way.
Okay.
Don't stand in the way.
These are
That will be a
interesting points.
dog in the manger policy.
And so far, the central government hasn't accepted any aid from the United Arab Emirates. Amit Kapoor, is that a mistake? As we heard from Mr. Isaac, you could have, 100,000 Malayalis in Dubai and Sharjah and elsewhere who go to Western Union and send a remittance back and want to actually help their families and their brethren. What on earth is the difference between that and maybe just the UAE as well going, hey, we want to pad that. We want to give that a little bit of a push. We want to add a few million to it so that the state can properly recover. What's wrong with that, and why has the government refused this aid?
So, this is a very important question that we are dabbling with. I think somewhere in 2009, the genesis for this lies in 2009. I think at that point in time when the tsunami had actually hit, the government of India at some point in time had said, oh, we are self-sustaining as a nation and we are not going to accept some grants. Or we are not going to accept aid, we are an aid-giving nation. But I think that's a very limited view to things. In fact, in the case of disaster like, say, Kerala, I really do not see that why we should not accept humanitarian aid, why we should not really accept aid from people who are actually coming in. I do not think it is in any way demeaning ourselves. It is just a question of accepting a neighbor's or a friend's, helping hand, and we should actually look at it. But having said that, I think the whole aid thing that we are talking about from UAE, there has been very varied sets of information that is actually coming through. There are some positives, there are some negatives. But there seems to be something that does not meet the eye. The government of India has not been very clear in terms of why they are not accepting it. Even if there is an amount which is like, say, X million dollars or X hundreds of millions of dollars, there is absolutely no evidence to the fact that it's being properly offered or what was actually happening. There is that fake news, deep fake news, and so on and so forth. But I think on a larger front, India should not really...
we've got the minister... We've got the minister from the state saying the UAE are offering money. So, I doubt that's fake news. We're hearing it from the man himself, right? We have to rule out the fake news because the man's saying the UAE offered it to us.
Oh, yes. So once the minister is saying, I absolutely accept the point that he's making, and I respect what he's saying. And I really think that if there is a friendly aid that is being offered, we should accept it. It's a question of, if there is a disaster in the world across the board, and if India is going to give a helping hand, why not? It's actually a question of something happens in, say, Sri Lanka or Pakistan or, say, Nepal. If we extend a helping hand, why not? We should do that. I think I respect what the minister is saying, and we can't really disagree with him. Right. In fact, when the minister is making a very powerful statesman, taking a statesman's position, when he says that we should go and talk to the central government and say that you should extend the aid and so on and so forth. I think we should look at it and cut away the whole political milieu that is happening here. It's about India, it's about Indians, it's about us, and we should work together to rebuild.
And for the people, the Keralites there, more than 400 dead in floods, more than 1 million displaced, and now fears of dengue, cholera, one of the big immediate issues, leptospirosis or rat fever, hundreds of confirmed cases. So big challenges ahead. It's been good to chat to both of you, Thomas Isaac and Amit Kapoor. Thank you very much for joining us on Newsmakers.